but for the most part, there's just this whole other world out there, that this whole other, I don't even know how to describe it, but there's all these other entities, and some of them are non-human. A lot of them are non-human, actually, and they're just trying to interact with us. They're just, they pick up they know that, and so they want to interact, and and for the most part, I would have to say that they're not harmful. They're just, they're not
just trying to get your attention.
They're just trying to get your attention. And some of them do have messages. And like Kathy, I find that I get my messages in my dreams as well. And there have been times where I have been contacted and I have said, meet me in my dreams.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, meet me in my dreams.
Kind of put that request out. Yeah, put that request out there. So when you say that they're non-human, like, what are they?
They're non-human. They're not from this world. They're not. I
mean, could we say, I mean, not to put it in the box of aliens, but they can be like other kind of beings, or do they have like a more demonic kind of thing? I mean, I don't want to get too far into that, but they're just other things that aren't whatever we are as humans, descendants from apes or whatever. They're just not that.
Yeah, I think they are. They've never been in a physical form.
Okay.
And I think that they, are still part of this plane. But I just don't think they've ever been in a physical form. Will they be in one? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know that much about them. But I can usually tell the difference between a ghost and something that has never been a human. So there's a lot of those.
Welcome everybody to Drink Tokens number 28, the Halloween edition. I have a couple special guests with us today, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves just so I don't mess it up. So guest number one, could you please tell us who you are?
My name is Carol Brewer, and I am a medium and a psychic. And
Cool.
a mother and a grandmother.
The important things, right?
It is.
The kiddos.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then guest number two, please.
My name is Carol, and I'm Catherine's sister. And I guess I'm a psychic, and I've never really labeled myself, so I wasn't prepared for that. I'm sorry.
I know, but you're so much more than that.
Oh yeah, I'm totally sure, even though I don't know you, but I'm totally sure there's other aspects of your life too.
Oh, maybe let's call me an empath. How about that?
Cool. Yeah, definitely. And let's get to that in explaining that. So the difference perhaps, but so real quick, first I owe Catherine an apology. So I guess back in April was when I first kind of went on Nextdoor and just sort of sent out like a mass hey, does anyone know any psychics or have any tales to tell? And she responded, and we had a couple traded a couple quick chats, and then I fell asleep for 6 months or so. So now that it's Halloween, I really appreciate that you responded so quickly, because I would have wrote me off. So.
Oh no, totally not. I was surprised to hear from you, and I thought, oh yeah, Halloween. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where everyone loves the costumes and candy and that stuff, but we're in a pandemic, so let's take it a notch deeper, because I'm sure America wants to hear something different than just we're all going to meet up and get COVID together, so but okay, so let's get started. So you reached out and you mentioned that you're in this sort of area. So I'm brand new to the whole thing. So whether you want to tell me what, kind of like the idea of how you kind of got started, like what age, what does it feel like? What's the experience that kind of tells you something's different? So I'll let you kind of create the dough from there.
Carol, I think you should say something.
Um,
Because
well,
she's a year older than me, so she has more experience and better memories, actually.
well, yeah, I do. It's true.
Mhm.
I'm a recorder.
Mhm.
I have, so I can speak for me, and I think I can speak for Kathy as well. But I mean, we have been sensitive since the day we were born, both of us. And my own experience is that I don't remember a time when I haven't been able to see things that other people don't see, hear things that other people don't hear, that are very real. And I think the thing that was interesting as a kid, we were brought up by
Ultra
ultra Christian,
conservative Christian fundamentalists.
fundamental, that's what I was looking for. And so, everything was basically, if it wasn't in the church, it was basically of the devil. And I remember even as a small kid thinking, that doesn't really make sense. But I kept it to myself. But so I think my whole life, I've always been sensitive. And there have been times where I've seen things that were going to happen. But as a child, I can remember saying to adults, we already did that, or we already said this, or you already did that. And, not really realizing that it was just something as a small kid that I'd already seen or experienced that hadn't happened yet. So,
and that's different from deja vu. What you
yeah.
experienced is different than that strange sense that someone already said that. You actually saw things happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's a weird thing. It's a knowing. It's not like, I always compare myself to like all the really cool psychics that have their own shows, because they make it look so easy and cool. And for me, it's not like that at all. For me, it's like when you're walking down the street and you smell jasmine and you're just like, oh, that's a jasmine plant, but you don't see one around. I mean, for me, that's it's just like, you just know this. And I never really questioned it any more than that. Now, I've never really tried to hone my gift. I mean, Kathy, I think she's definitely worked on honing her skills. And
well, you know why? I mean, because you were unafraid and I was always afraid. She was fearless and I couldn't handle it. And so I actually remember at about 7 or 8, I remember praying in church to not have to see or experience anything or hear or know. I couldn't handle it. First of all, I couldn't handle being the devil. I couldn't handle being a bad person for being so strange. And also couldn't handle like the knowing that there were all these things around me that I couldn't process it. And so it took, even though I had a number of experiences throughout my life, it really was only about 5 years ago that I decided to open the door and say, okay, I'll look at it. I couldn't discount or let it not be a thing anymore. It's like denying a whole huge part of yourself and not allowing that to be one of your truths. So Carol is way ahead of me in development because she's been a natural her whole life, and I'm catching up. I'll always be a little bit behind, at least by a year.
At least by a year.
At least by a year.
So when you say a natural, is it like is it a capacity to sort of take in what's going on, or is it like when you say she's always been like that and you weren't, or is it more being like the honest part, like you mentioned,
well,
like being open?
Studies, there's actually some recent studies that show that there are brain differences between people who see ghosts, see UFOs. They call it the phenomena, they call it high strangeness. So this is a good introduction for you. The paranormal is very connected with UFO, which we've both had UFO experiences. And it's very common for people who've had those experiences to have to have high strangeness, ghosts, things that move, things that make noise, people that whisper in your ear at night, telekinesis, like I've, made things blow up. And especially when you're younger and those things happen, it can be really scary, especially when your family code is that we don't do those things and we're not those kinds of people, so. And she wasn't afraid. She just saw those things and allowed those things and let those things be a part of her world, where I was trying very, very hard to be a good Lutheran person, and not have those experiences. But so like if your brain works differently and you're not a linear thinker, your brain is actually more open to the possibilities of like what some people call like the multiverse. Like the universe is more in layers. And you can see around the corner, even if you don't want to, you can see around the corner, whereas other people can't. Like, I had a UFO experience with a friend, and they saw something totally different than I saw. Their experience that they were a scientist actually, and so they processed it in a scientific way. And I just saw what I saw and had the experience. And so I would say that Carol's brain was accepting, and mine, I was really afraid. I was scared of all of the things, and I kept having experiences and they kept scaring me until I actually landed I bought a haunted house accidentally. I didn't really, actually I did know it was haunted, but I pretended that it wasn't because I really needed to buy a house. And I lived in that haunted house, and it just got like crazier and crazier and crazier until literally the day I drove away in the moving truck. Crazy things just like happened almost every day. And that is the part of why I said, it's time for me to actually start looking at this and stop being afraid of it. But Carol's never been afraid of it.
No,
She's, fearless and brave.
So I was gonna throw a joke in there. That's what the real estate market will do to you. It'll make you buy a haunted house. But
it's exactly what the real estate market did to me. I had no choice. I had to.
You're like, I could see it all happening, but F it. So, but okay. So if we can go back, and then I definitely want to get to the haunted house. Let's go back to like, what are the, as kids now, Catherine, you said you were scared. So what are you both as kids, like kind of being exposed? Like, what are you hearing? What are you seeing? Is it, like you said, voices whispering? Is it, you're seeing like the future, if you will? That's what I think, Carol, you said. So like what kind of different things? And I don't mean to be too general, so please just whatever.
Go ahead, Carol.
As a really small child, very, very small, like 3-4 years old, I do remember, seeing people in the rooms or in the houses, or just on the street that nobody else could see, and but I knew I saw them, and I remember everything, and I think one of the experiences, I think I was probably about 8 or 9 when I realized I was having a true ghost experience, and it was actually an animal, and it was a dog that had befriended all of us kids at a bus stop, and it had been killed, and his name was Charlie. And I just remember loving him so much and being so devastated by his death. And I was in my room crying, and all of a sudden I felt my bed being bumped, and then I heard that snuffling noise that he makes, and I smelled him, and I realized he was there. And I wasn't afraid. I was just like, oh, Charlie. And
you're unbelievable. I would have gone running. Oh, wow. You're amazing.
But it was comforting. And it was just there for a few minutes, and I was fine. I knew Charlie had come to visit me, and I was comforted, and I, never said anything to anybody because we didn't in our family. But I think that was probably my first conscious, a ghost, came to see me. And my whole life, I think if I had to describe how this works for me, and I think this is how it works for most people, is it's the same as a radio. You know, there's signals going out and you're receiving them. And your antenna is up there. And so for me, you can pick up as many signals as you want. And the funny part, I think, about the other side is that they know you can receive. So they, you know, because they can sense you. And so they're gonna try and connect with you as well. And I think one of the things that I learned was that you can actually control the sensitivity of your antenna. And so there are times when I've been super sensitive, and it can be too much. I live in Port Townsend, and it's an old historical town, and driving through or walking through, it's exhausting. All the
I think I moved away from Port Townsend probably for that very reason. I just couldn't hack it anymore. It was just like everything was, like,
yeah, that's exactly how it is. Wow. There's one restaurant I could never not go in where I'm, just like immediately break out in goosebumps. My dogs are alarmed. Sorry. For no reason. For the 17th time today.
Are you sure that maybe they're seeing a ghost?
Hey, how about if you stop it? Don't do that. I hate them.
So just on the I think the Charlie story.
Yeah.
Is it so it like you mentioned the radio waves? Is there a physical form? Like how I guess like like the movie ideas like Ghosts, where he's able to do a little bit but not exactly influence a lot. So the fact that like maybe Charlie bumped your bed, but like in that experience, did you pet him, or was it just knowing he was there?
No, I didn't pet him, but okay. I knew he was there. And I think that I have done the full spectrum. I mean, I've had full body apparitions show up that I thought were actual people. Wow. So it's a huge range. I'm not sure how it works. I don't know if, how that's supposed to work.
Your brain's different.
Yeah.
Interesting. So Catherine, how about for you? Like, what was something like your early experiences?
I actually don't have any early ghost experiences, but I have I can feel presences, and I hear them. So they make themselves known. So I don't see, and I actually asked not to, and that was one of the things that I kind of kept. And so, and actually, I don't know if that was such a good idea, because they'll try harder to get your attention. It's like in the house. Yeah. We have like a really crazy shared experience when we were adults, but as a child, my experiences, they mainly kind of like seeped through, like you put a paper towel and the liquid will seep through. And because I had said, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not a devil. I don't want to do this stuff. Still, the thing is, it's in you and it's going to come out. And so I had like dreams that like messages would be sent to me in dreams. And then it would happen, like a day later. And this is as a child. So I'd have dreams, and the dreams would actually come true. Or there was someone was trying to give me a message in a dream, and I could remember the dream, but I didn't connect it until after it happened. So maybe it was a warning, or it was information. And that's happened a lot as an adult. I've had what would you say, Carol, like almost a charmed life in some ways. I've had a lot of really kind of wild things happen that shouldn't have happened, and I feel like I've been the beneficiary of a lot of assistance in my adult life. So as a child, I had a lot of fear. I knew those things were around me. I didn't want to see them, and I didn't want to be a part of it, but it would come through. Especially it started happening, especially as a teenager, where like lights would flash when I was angry. And I have a witness to that. And I thought I was crazy, but when it happened in front of someone, they had to say that actually happened, and so the dreams happened. And so the things that, I said, no, I don't want these things. And you actually can say, no, I don't want those things. But I forgot to say, no, I don't want those things either. So those other things came. And it made me feel like I was a strange person, a bad person, an abnormal person. I had no one to talk to about it. There was no one. I don't even think Carol and I shared these things because it was so powerful in our family that we're not to be different in that way. And we couldn't help but be different.
Yeah, that's true.
And so they mostly came out like right around when I was between 14. And then they, happened until this day. So, but I'm learning how to do this now. And I've been learning over the last 5 years. So I was totally unaccepting of who I was and what I could do. And I always thought it was just kind of like a strange coincidence that I got a message in a dream, or this thing happened, or I asked for that and it appeared the next day, or I got angry and lights blew up, things like that.
Wow.
So like my experiences are more from like that, early teenage years onwards. But I had as a child, I had plenty of spooky times where I realized that there were things going on around me, but I chose not to participate. I didn't want to be a part of it. I didn't want to know about it. I didn't want to be that person,
Did either of you feel in danger in those early years, or was it just a matter of just kind of being somewhere where there's a lot of noise? I mean, compare, if without the psychic ability, somebody who's in a rough neighborhood, like that becomes a norm, that there's all this stuff going on. Or was there like, did you run into anything at that time that was like really risky and you had to really kind of figure it out?
My mentor asked me, she said, do you recall times where you had near-death experiences, like where you had an accident where you could have died? And I had a couple of things like that happen where Carol, do you remember when I ran through that glass door?
Yeah.
Yeah. I ran through a glass door. It was before people put those little butterfly things on, so people wouldn't run through glass doors.
Mm-hmm.
I ran through a glass door. I was just playing. I was like at that age, 13, 14. And the glass just shattered. There was glass everywhere. And I didn't have a scratch on me.
Wow.
Yeah. I think, look, I mean, it was like so common for me to experience those things. And so, but looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, that's actually not very common. That's actually how people die.
Oh yeah.
Or car accidents, like I've had so many near misses. But it was only as a young adult that I had some pretty interestingly negative experiences. And probably because I had so much fear. I think sometimes, like how you walk around is, Carol, do you think that you kind of attract that if you sort of exude it?
If you're fearful?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I had a lot of like scary paranormal experiences that were just freaked out scary.
Yeah.
And I didn't think they were awesome, and I didn't feel special for having them.
Right. I can imagine. Yeah.
Like I really didn't feel special.
So, yeah. And okay. So if we could, let's jump to, I mean, I don't want to dive into the evil stuff, but I love this. I love the part about the haunted house, right? Halloween. So going into this purchase and then living there, like, so what kind of kicks you off into knowing that like some place you're looking at is going to come with that baggage?
Well, I rented it first.
Okay.
I rented it first. This was when I was living in Port Townsend, and I was working at a local newspaper as a marketing director. And I just needed to get out of the area because you work for a newspaper and everybody knows you. And I could never get away from my job, especially in a small town. Mm. And so I found a little place in a little place called Port Ludlow that's right, kind of like very, very close to the Hood Canal. And I thought, okay, cool. This place doesn't have rats or bugs or drugs or anything bad. It's in an old people neighborhood. I can do this. So I rented it, and it was like about a week after I moved in, and I was sitting on the couch, and my 2 dogs were with me, and my cat was on my lap, and I was facing the TV, just watching the TV, and I'd already had a strange feeling about the property, but I just sort of like, I'm so used to blowing things off. I'm just like, whatever. I mean, I'd had plenty of paranormal experiences before this house, so many. And especially Carol and I have had these experiences together. But this was just me, just by myself. And the back of the couch was facing a wall that had a coat closet behind it. And there's nothing in that closet except for, there was everything in that closet. The closet was making a lot of noise, like something, jangling, bumping, jangling. And I'm like, oh God, the house is haunted. God damn it.
Oh,
and I remember sitting on the couch saying to myself, okay, so are you going to be all freaked out and scared, or are you going to do this differently? Because seems to be following you around wherever you go. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to be cool. And so I just ignored it. And then it, I was there for about like 4 or 5 years, because after a year of renting it, I decided to buy it because the real estate market had nowhere to live. And it was constant noise, doors rattling, doors opening, the sound of things slithering. And then it started happening to the people, like my family, that would come to visit. Lots of really strange things. And I could count on it happening, especially when I had my family over. Like the ceiling would you'd hear this loud crack, and everyone would look up, and I'd say, ha.
You knew, yeah.
Because I had just gotten so used to it. And then, but then when I decided to gut the house and remodel it, and then, oh Lord help me, that disrupted everything. It was not good. I had to put my dogs in the basement. We'd had sort of an agreement, because the basement was where it was a daylight basement that was unfinished. So there was no interior stairs connecting to the bottom of the house. And we knew that the basement had a problem. In fact, we knew the land itself had a problem, or what we consider a problem, but they didn't consider it a problem. They were there, whoever that was. And the agreement was, I stay out of the basement and you stay out of the upper level of the house. Well, they never really held their bargain, but the basement was so creepy and scary that I didn't really go down there. So when I remodeled, I put my 2 dogs downstairs, because the remodelers really just didn't want them, to be upstairs while they're tearing the whole place apart. Well, my dogs were so scared of the basement that one actually chewed its way out of a door.
Oh,
there was a hole in the door. And so when I got home and the construction guys told me what happened, I went down to look, and my phone's fully charged. I walked down the hill to the outside entrance of the basement, and all the lights in the house shut off. My phone power's down. I'm totally in the dark in the dead of winter. And I just stood there and I said, fine, I'm going back right now. I walked back up the hill to my house, all the lights turned back on again.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah. Well, and so many things like that happened. And then I had a problem with the bathroom, where I'd walk in and, the toilet seat would be down. I'd walk, and I say, I don't put the lid down. I put it back up. I walk back down, and the lid goes back down. So it's like every time I'm in, the lid's up, down, up, down, up, down. The doors are not, rattling. And then, like my grandchildren would be over, and one time there was a difficulty. And so this was kind of negative, where one of them was being sort of bossy, and it was during this remodel, and there was a chair that was standing, you know how you stack chairs and there's one chair down on the bottom and then the legs are on top.
Oh, right. You kind of have it upside down or whatever.
Yeah. Well, this chair is incredibly heavy, but it flipped like this, all the way like that, and landed on one of the children who was causing a problem, and basically pinned her where she was under this chair
Oh
in a
my
ball.
God.
And
Yeah.
that's when I walked in. All the little girls came running, and I said, "What happened?" I take the chair up and pull it off this child, and she said, "It just flipped up in the air and went down on her."
Oh my God.
And I said, "Okay, so no."
Right. Now you're having with the kids at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Now, okay, I'm so sorry. You don't like the remodel. I can't help it. We have to increase the value of the house so I can get out. Okay, do you get this? Which is exactly what I did. But but there was many experiences like that. And I think the two most interesting experiences where I was actually talking with my son. The house had been sold. We were just waiting for the sale to close. And this was 3 years ago. And I said, the house has been really quiet lately. I was sitting in my bedroom talking, and everything had been packed up. There was only one thing in the living room, and that was a floor lamp. Floor lamp went down so hard. There was a huge crash, and it broke into pieces.
So like that was like the last, the last like.
Well, it wasn't quite the last thing.
Oh no.
On the day that I moved, I went to get the truck, and my moving crew was at the house with a friend of mine. And I came back with the truck, and he said, "Something strange has happened." I said, "I can't even imagine. Something strange with the house, really?" And he said, the old owner, the person who actually built the house, they died. And their family came with their ashes. And I said, "And you said," he goes, "Oh, they're under the tree." And I'm like, "Oh, it's so good that I'm leaving." Like, it's just, the house was just, it was busy. It was busy.
Wait,
Constant noise.
like the actual family literally showed up to have the ceremony on the day you're leaving?
And I was gone. It happened while I was gone.
Wow, that's insane.
Yes, I know. It's just, it's really crazy. And I won't, I go back to Port Townsend often, and I won't drive by that house. I just shut the door on that thing. It was just a little much for me, but I handled it. Whereas, 20 years ago, I couldn't have handled it.
Right.
I couldn't.
You just be out of there. I think most of us would just be out of there, like somebody figure this out.
I wanted to win, and when the realtors came to list the house, we were in the yard, and I was kind of debating in my mind, should I tell them? And the husband, it was a husband-wife team, and the husband said, "What's that noise?" I'm like, "What noise?"
Right.
And he said, "There's this banging, like someone's banging on the basement walls." I said, "House is haunted." And he goes, "Oh." And so we went, he goes, "Let's go in the basement." I said, "Okay, I'm with you guys." So I was trying to open the basement door. I'm just trying to open it, and it wouldn't open for me. And finally I forced it open, and it flung right back and shut in my face. And the realtors turned to me, and he said, "This seems very personal." And he opened the door. He just turned the knob and opened the door. And I said, "The basement's yours from now on. I'm not coming down here again."
Wow.
Yeah, it was really, really something.
So to that point, are the spirits or whatever's there, are they, like you said, they kind of have a personal, whatever it is, they kind of have an agenda, do you think? Or is it kind of just like they're angry and anybody can get it? Or is it, maybe they don't like you?
I think it's because I think that when I think that we know that they're there, and they know that we know.
Okay.
Now we all know. And so why pretend anymore? They're there, and they're going to make sure that I know that they're there, because I know that they're there. Someone else may not know that they're there, and they won't have any experiences.
Okay.
Carol, do you think it's like that?
Yeah, I do think it's like that.
Yeah. So everywhere I go, something knows. And it's actually kind of up to me now how I react. And I react better now than I ever have before. It's just it's actually all kind of depending on me, because it's going to happen. I think it's pretty much going to happen wherever I go. So the house may be haunted, and it may have some kind of energy, because it had some kind of very powerful energy attached to the land. And I know this sounds really woo, but it really did. You could feel it. And a lot of people could feel it too. They just couldn't explain what they were feeling. I just, like things happened for me. And for some reason, they decided to do some things in front of the realtor. And actually that night, the realtor said, "Can you leave for a couple hours? I'm going to come to your house." And she told me much, much later after the house sold that she actually had a conversation with the house and
Oh,
asked the
really?
house to behave and be nice,
So,
because I was leaving and it wanted that. So let me go.
So is there any truth to like the hippy dippy, like do some sage and do things like that, or is that just kind of like
Carol?
different philosophy?
I believe in sage. I believe in smoke. I believe that there's power. It's your intention. If you set your intention, you can get a lot done. I personally believe burning sage does clear energy. And
Carol, I used Palo Santo Hollywood. I mean, I burned it in that house.
Yeah.
When I decided to take control.
There's almost no smoke that's bad, really. I don't know what it is about smoke that's so cleansing, but
yeah,
no, it works. It does. It may not be permanent, sometimes it's not, like if you have a really insistent energy or entity that wants to be there or has an agenda, the smoke isn't really going to do much.
Right.
Maybe piss it off a little.
I mean, do you think again, this just being nothing but TV, but do you think like exorcisms and all that kind of stuff has a place with the average sort of spirit perhaps, or is that more like along the lines of like religious entities and things of that nature? Or I don't even want to say exorcism like a church, but whether you bring in a shaman or somebody, whatever your flavor of the outside party is.
I think you can clear those things. I think I know what you're asking. Exorcisms, it's a very Catholic, like
Right.
expel the demons. I think if I had a spirit in my house and I didn't want it here, I do think that we are able to make it leave.
I agree.
And nothing fancy. You can just say, get out, or use whatever words you want. And I do believe you can make them leave. I had a cabin in Friday Harbor for a long time, and that place was so haunted.
Holy Mother of God, that are you? But is you sure that's not you? Because all kinds of crazy things happened at that cabin.
I know, but
that was just like cabin crazy.
I acquired a boyfriend, and
which one? Sorry.
Which of my many boyfriends? Okay, I did go through a slut
boyfriend
phase.
Oh, I love that. Don't say that. That's not true.
Actually,
she had the cabin. You got the place. You got to let it happen. That's how it is.
But I acquired a boyfriend that I later married. But for some reason,
that one.
They hated him. And I mean, he fell downstairs. He had lots of really bad experiences. So many that he didn't want to spend the night anymore. Like he didn't want to stay there. And I remember at some point I thought, well, this is a problem because I really like this guy. And so I talked to a couple of different people that had more experience. And, they came out to the property. It was a man and a wife. And, and they said, well, I'm getting the feeling that this is non-human. And I don't think they want to go, but we can send them to the light, but we could also give them the choice. And so, I said, well, I get the feeling that they don't want to go to the light. She said, well, then you just banish them from the property. And it was really that simple. They were just simply not allowed back on the property. And for the most part, they stayed away. They had my very last day, the day that I moved out, they showed back up for one final fuck you to Joe.
Wow. Poor guy.
Kind of like mine, Carol. That's awesome.
What?
Kind of like mine with the lamp and the ashes of the deceased person.
Yeah. And this was actually a light bulb. It was, it was my porch light. and we had just loaded the very last thing on the moving truck, and I started to walk towards him, and we heard an explosion, and the light bulb actually shot out whole and missed his head by
Wow.
like not even an inch.
That's crazy.
And from inside, one of my cats started screaming. It was Frederick, and it was crazy. And he goes, "Did you see that?" I said, "Oh yeah, I saw that." And he actually went and got the light bulb, and it was whole. It had just been shot out with such force. It was amazing. So that was that was a long story to say, yes, you can make them leave, but sometimes they don't stay gone.
Well, remember when I would spend the night at the cabin, and I'd say, "Wow, this happened and this happened," and you would just laugh. I mean, I remember I was sitting on the couch and I had a wine glass on the windowsill behind me.
Yeah.
I went to get the wine glass, and I had the wine glass, and I realized the wine glass was getting pulled out of my hand.
It was.
And so I had to get up fast off the couch, and I was basically being led across the room by the wine glass.
Oh,
Yep.
And I'm finally like, I'm looking back at you like, what's going on with the wine glass? And and then like I slept in your bed that night, and I was kept awake by scratching under the floor. And I thought,
Yeah.
Oh, F
it was-
that.
oh man, I know. It was all damn night. And I'm like, I kept saying to myself, well, I don't know why there's a cat under the bed, because man, and I told Carol, I'm like, that cat, which cat was scratching under the bed all night long? And she said, the cats were outside. I'm like, oh,
Yeah, it's not a yeah.
I was in that bed all night.
I have to say, I lived in that cabin for almost 10 years. And for the most part, it wasn't really, I mean, they never really bothered me. I mean, I had lots of things happen, but I never felt threatened. But if Kathy came over, like, remember when they pushed your purse off the table and
My keys went flying.
Yeah.
I dropped my keys on the table, and they go, whoop. And I'm like, did you see that?
I think you got sent down the
shit.
stairs once too.
Yeah, I got sent down the stairs.
Yeah.
None of it was, they didn't, well, but then I've always taken it so personally, because I've had so many, like what I considered negative experiences. I just thought, why does everyone hate me?
Yeah.
But
What
they,
did I do?
you know, and they were that way with Joe as well. Like, he had lots of horrible experiences there too.
Yeah.
I didn't, but I wanted to keep my friends.
Well, but you also thought it was funny. And so I
I
think
did.
they liked you better because you thought it was funny. And so you let them be them. And anytime anything happened to me, I'm just like, what? Hey, no. And they're just like, we don't like you. We will now hurt you.
I'm
So-
sorry.
Like the skulls. Remember
Yeah.
the skulls?
Yep.
What were the skulls?
So I used to, okay, so I used to house sit for a billionaire in Seattle. And he had a full staff. He had a chef and a cleaning staff. But
Do
when
we
he
do we
traveled-
know who that billionaire is?
He owned,
would-
did he
you
own
would.
QFC, like all the millions of QSCs in the world?
But we're not going to say his name.
We're not going to say
Okay.
his name,
We'll
but
look
he
him
owned
up.
all the millions of QFCs in the world.
Okay.
So when he traveled, even though he had a staff, he liked to have somebody living in the house. So he would pay me to live in his house, his mansion. And he had a dog and a cat, and you know, and I was there a lot, and that place was definitely haunted. I had so many crazy experiences there, but again, I never really felt frightened or threatened.
And you didn't warn me about what I was walking into, and had you, I wouldn't have gone to visit you there.
So it's on the lake, and Kathy came to visit. And the first night, it was funny because we were sitting in his theater room or whatever you call it, where there's movie. I don't know, rich people have them, right?
Yeah, like a big
Yeah.
big screen and the big
Yeah.
chairs and yeah.
And I, all of a sudden, it was interesting because I started feeling this overwhelming, like, feeling of fear.
Ooh.
And everything felt really bad. And I looked over at you, Kath, and you were alarmed.
Because I knew what was happening, and I'm just like, but we had a warning. I had been warned, and I didn't leave. Remember? I mean, I went over, and it's like one of those properties that has like this, you know, like yard, maybe like a mile of the most green velvety lawn in the world. all the way to the shore. And Carol said, take your shoes off. It's so velvety. It's amazing. And I said, okay. And so I took my shoes off and we're walking, and I'm walking and I keep getting pricked on the bottom of my foot. Like there's thorns or blackberries or something. And I'm like, this is not velvety. This is bad. and I finally, and you kept saying, no, the lawn's perfect. It's wonderful. It's just been, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm getting hurt here. And so I finally like put my foot up and I reached down and I pulled this thing out of my foot. And it was like this big, and it was like a skull with a spike.
With a spike on top of its head.
It was a skull with a spike, and I pulled a skull with a spike on top of it out of the bottom of my foot.
What kind of animal is that?
You don't know?
You don't know. It might have been a fish. It was so hard to tell.
Oh my gosh.
But then as you and I were looking at it, we looked up, and then they were all over the whole lawn.
Yeah,
no
they were.
way.
Within seconds. We saw it together. We saw it together.
Yep.
We saw it together, and it's real. It really happened. And so you started laughing, because that's what you do. And I'm like this. I'm like, I don't know what to do, because I thought, this is so crazy. And then we went inside, and you said, and there's like, like how many decks? Like, it's like one of those houses with a deck here and a deck there and a deck there, and it's all extreme and amazing. And so I sit down. She goes, let's go have lunch on this amazing opulent deck. And I'm like, yeah, let's do this. So I sit down on this like incredibly ultra expensive furniture, and something pinches me in the butt. And I got up. Skull.
And one dropped from the sky.
And then they dropped from the sky. And then within seconds, skulls were all over the whole deck.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And I had been house sitting there for years, and it has never happened.
So I thought, okay, it still didn't connect for me. I still didn't get the warning. And so I went downstairs. She was in the maid's quarters, which I think is really interesting, in that the maid's quarters were the original house back from like the late 1800s, early 1900s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went down there, and that's when I realized like the room, the whole place got super cold. And I was going up the stairs, and I knew something was behind me. I turned around and I said, I know you're here. And that's when all the trauma started.
Wait, it got worse?
Yes.
Oh my god. So wait. What happened to all the skulls? So they appeared. Do they just disappear, or do they stick around?
I think it was dark at that point, and we were too terrified to go and say, hey, are the skulls still there?
Yeah, no, I get it. If you run out of there like an instant or something.
Well, and then, like the kitchen's so amazing, and there's a theater room, but then everything started to go wrong. And we ended up huddled together in her bedroom, in the bed. I could swear like the door was rattling, but I really don't remember, Carol. Do you?
There was a lot of activity.
Yeah, things were happening. It was almost like the air was swirling around us. We had the covers pulled over our heads, and I was like 37, 38.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't a kid.
No.
But it was really intense. And so that kind of prepared me for my very own haunted house.
I think what's funny is I was house sitting there a couple of weeks later, and you had a weekend with no kids, and this mansion had these gigantic heavy front door, this huge heavy front door. It was
like 3 times the size of a regular door.
Yeah. And I was talking to Kathy on the phone, and I said, hey, I'm at this place this weekend, you should come. And the front door, I all of a sudden heard this really loud slam. You couldn't miss it. And Kathy goes, what was that?
I thought I said no, and the door slammed at the same time.
It just slammed. Yeah. And you said there's no way I would ever come back.
No way.
And I think the house was saying, no, she's not coming back.
No.
It was mutual.
We'll never meet again.
Wow.
I don't know why they didn't like me. They didn't like me at all, but they like Carol. But that's my experience with Carol and I, is that they all like her and they don't like me.
Because you're afraid.
Well, I'm not so much afraid anymore.
Well, then they'll probably start liking you.
Well, I don't know if I want that either.
Yeah. Oh my god.
No, I mean, I had now I lived in Suquamish for about 2 years, and my neighbors have seen things float by my house. But I've seen some things, but I just shrug my shoulders. I'm like, I'm not scared.
So I mean, I think that's super cool. Like I'll call it maturity, but it's not, it's not necessarily that. It's like you've dealt with it so long. It's like you're starting to get to that point of this is what it is.
It's not going to go away.
Right.
So I might as well figure it out and deal with it.
So if I can just ask Carol, so with your sort of mindset and, I'm kind of with you. I kind of laugh at stuff, like when stuff goes bad, you can only kind of laugh it off sometimes.
Yeah.
But how did you kind of come to that? And I assume it started early as well, which is sort of the attitude that like if I can't control it, then I'm not going to just let it like maybe put you in fear as much as you probably were in fear. But so anyway, how did you kind of come to that mindset of how you deal with it?
I think because I was aware of it and accepted it so early. I mean, there are definitely times to be afraid, and there have been times where I have been afraid, because there's everything out there. There's good and there's evil, and there's, and everything in between. It's just, there are good intentions and bad. And I think probably because I started so young and realized, that when something scares you, that you can banish it, or you can make yourself safe. And I just took it, probably I just was so used to it that it was just another part of the world to me. And I'm one of those awful people that laughs, when people get hurt. And so it's been amusing forever that,
What's that show we always watch at MTV, Ridiculousness, where like people are getting hurt, the skateboarding and all that stuff. Yeah.
I am a horrible.
There's a word for that. You're like the mistress of Schadenfreude,
it's awful, but I can't help it. And it's funny. And it's funny when, and my husband does not like the idea that there are ghosts, but he's been with me long enough and has been exposed to some things. He can't deny it either. And he doesn't like it. And he responds with fear, and I laugh. It's terrible. It's funny because I think it's because I know it's not harmful. Like, I think I would know if there was something harmful happening, and I wouldn't laugh. I would take it in a different direction. But for the most part, there's just this whole other world out there, I don't even know how to describe it, but there's all these other entities, and some of them are non-human. A lot of them are non-human, actually. And they're just trying to interact with us. They're just, they pick up they know that, and so they want to interact, and they're, and for the most part, I would have to say that they're not harmful. They're just, they're not
just trying to get your attention.
They're just trying to get your attention. And some of them do have messages. And like Kathy, I find that I get my messages in my dreams as well. And there have been times where I have been contacted and I have said, meet me in my dreams.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Meet me in my dreams.
Kind of put that request out. Yeah. Put that request out there. So when you say that they're non-human, like what are they?
They're non-human. They're not from this world. They're not. Could we say, not to put it in the box of aliens, but they can be like other kind of beings, or do they have like a more demonic kind of thing? I don't want to get too far into that, but they're just other things that aren't whatever we are as humans, descendants from apes or whatever. They're just not that. Yeah, I think they are. They've never been in a physical form.
Okay.
And I think that they, are still part of this plane. But I just don't think they've ever been in a physical form. Will they be in one? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know that much about them. But I can usually tell the difference between a ghost and something that has never been a human. So There's a lot of those, actually.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too scared of talking on, evil stuff or things like that, but
But it's
it is.
Halloween.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you mentioned, okay, we'll go there then. So Catherine, you mentioned like our messages that there are like demons out there. So
Yeah,
so
there are.
when you say that, what do you kind of mean by that?
You hear about it, you read about it, people joke about it, church talks about it, but you don't really know about it until you look one in the face. And I have. And it wasn't because I wanted to. I don't know how I fell into this situation, but I saw someone get taken over, and it was unbelievably terrifying. Because it's unbelievably terrifying because the hatred that is directed at you is unbelievably terrifying. And this is something that absolutely makes it very clear that they want to hurt you, and they want you to be afraid, and they want you to know how much they want you to be afraid and how much they want you to be hurt.
And this
And
isn't like under the influence or something like
there
that.
was
This
no
isn't.
influence. It wasn't under any influence. And it was terrifying, and I really never got over it, because it made me realize that there were layers to the universe, and that I actually and it was one of my early adult experiences, and I started to put it all together much later in my life. But it was at that point where I actually learned how to say no, not that, not you, not this, not that, ever no. And I had to work really hard at that, especially when you're growing up and you're told that you're evil, you're told that you're bad, you're told that because you don't like walk the party line, or you appear different, or someone actually knows something that's different about you. That can be a really very serious experience. But other people actually wanted that experience, and they enjoyed that experience, that they felt like they had a purpose and they were helping this person. But it was like it was more scary than any of the scariest movies that are out there on the subject. It is far more frightening in real life to see, and only because it was so hateful. That's
And
why it
and
was so
this
frightening.
and this person, you knew them. It wasn't like a stranger on the street.
No, I knew that person, and they were not a hateful person. They were not a bad
Wow.
person. But they somehow got involved in this group of people that were involved in exorcism, and they volunteered to be a part of this. And I got roped in to go because I actually didn't know what was happening. I thought I was going to a prayer circle, and I was, continuing my path as a good Christian girl. And that's one of the things that led me away from being involved in the church, was this to me is out of order. This to me is out of alignment. This to me makes no sense. This to me is something that I don't want to participate in. And I realized that you actually get to choose whether these things get to manifest at all, And
Right. How far are they going to go?
yeah, and it'll go as far as you let it, honestly. Which is why later in life, I don't know why I got so terrified of the skulls falling out of the sky. Well, anyone would.
Yeah.
But
Oh, for sure.
one would think by that time I would have been used to all those things happening. But I was never brave like Carol was. And also I wasn't accepting of my ability to see between all the layers, and that this thing looked at me in the eyes because it knew that I saw it. Someone else didn't have that same kind of experience in that room. It was personal. It was for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it played into all the old tapes that I was given as I was growing up. But looking back on it, now I see, these days I say to myself, that was a really important experience for me to have, because that can happen again today and I'd be a totally different person and handle it differently. And I have had some other negative entity experiences, and I've been like, no, we're not going to do that, and I don't have to. And things they go away. You get to decide, you really do. When I was beginning my kind of like my training in allowing myself to be who I am, before I would go to sleep, things would come to me and yell in my ear, blah, 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 blah. And a lot of them were talking, like wanting me to do something or wanting to talk. Some of them were negative, and I just said out, I learned, which I wish I had learned so much earlier in life. But then again, like, we didn't talk about it. Carol and I never really had this in-depth conversation. Like, we laughed about it. We said, oh, that's crazy. Oh, that's weird. But I never said, hey, can you teach me how to Dougie? I mean, like, I wish I knew how to do this. Yeah. I'm sorry, Carol, I should have asked for help and I never did.
I don't know. It was.
Yeah. But I seem to have been like a lightning rod for, pretty awful entity experiences until I decided that I wasn't. I mean, it's not that I didn't have some positive experiences. I had, some positive, really, really positive entity experiences as well.
So as we kind of wrap up, can we talk about then what you're doing now in terms of like readings and other kind of things? So like, how do you take this gift, if you want to call it a gift, but how do you take the gift and how do you, use it to benefit, whether it's, other people or, society or whatever? Like, how do you, within your, what you're currently doing, how do
that is exactly my desire, to use it to help other people, to benefit other people, to help them heal, to help them connect, to help them forgive, to be forgiven, to deal, to change things, to not change things. And I think that utilizing all the layers of the universe and all the things that we have around us that are actually like my feeling now is that the things that are around me are there to assist. Even if it may seem a little scary, it's there to assist, and I accept the assistance. But I've learned, extremely good boundaries. One thing that, when you're like Carol, an empath, is that you can walk by someone and you can feel, know, think, see. And, like that can be very overwhelming. And so for me, my work is to wait for someone to reach out to me. And so I do tarot readings. I can remote view. So that's another thing. And mainly like that I can look at someone and I can know some things. And I think that is useful. But I think the most important work that I would like to do is to help people connect to their own guides, their own assistants, because that's true power, is when you can acknowledge that you also have assistants around you to help you live a better life, a more pleasant life, an easier life, a happier life, a more meaningful life, a life where, you acknowledge what matters and what's meaningful to you. And I think a lot of us are just like, sliding by day, trying to pay the light bill.
Right. No,
So I guess that's where I hope to go.
Can you, sorry, so my partner mentioned that we were going to have this podcast with you and Carol today. And I guess her experience to his coworker, her experience was talking with people that can talk to the dead. And I know that I'm only packaging that as a service. So is that something you guys do, or is that kind of something that's not exactly? Because I mean, to me, I don't know how beneficial that is, but I know some of the mediums that are on TV, like we talked about earlier, kind of seem to specialize in like, somebody's here, it's your uncle or aunt. So anyway, what's your thought on that?
I have done that. Yeah, I have done that. And I'm very open to doing that. Carol is, Carol, I don't know if you've done that for people, but she's naturally good at that.
I have not done it for people.
Yeah.
On purpose. I've had stuff come through where I have reached out to people, even people I don't know, and I have said, hey, I don't know if this makes any sense to you, but there's a woman. She's your ancestor, and I think her name might be Amelie or Emily, and I think you're going to have a granddaughter. I think you have another one coming, and this one's going to be special. And I have, that has happened before. But it's, for me, it's not, I'm not really working at it or trying to like provide anything. I think I'm just trying to pay the light bill right now, but I think it might be fun to explore this more in the future, because I do feel like, well, there's obviously a reason for this, and I am always open. Like, it's not like, but I don't really have a purpose other than to be.
I have to tell him, for one last thing, when we saw each other in person last, she talks to animals and they talk to her.
No way. That's cool.
True story.
Where do
We're
they
just
say?
standing there in the parking lot in Port Hadlock, where there's a big forest around us, and Carol she looked behind me. She goes, "Do you see that?" And I'm like, "No." Clearly there was something there. And then something came out of the trees and made this loud whoop noise. And I said, "I saw something." I said, "Was that talking to you?" And Carol started laughing. I'm like, wow, you really developed you've really like grown as a whatever it is that you are, Carol. But
there's a connection there, and I think we all have it. I think we're all born with it, and I think a lot of people start to lose it as they grow older. Mm-hmm. And they assimilate into a quote unquote normal world. And but I'm very, very grounded in the earth. My feet are connected to the earth, and I feel that we are all, related. Like, we all came from the same explosion. We all have that same DNA or molecules in us, and I don't know how that happened, Kathy, but yeah, I do. Yeah.
Well, like for me, when people say we're all connected, I believe that we're all like connected as a consciousness. And that when we say, well, that spirit is inhuman or not human, I think that we're all actually not human. But I think Carol and I are probably the least amount of human people that I know. Really, honestly. But I think that I consider myself a piece of consciousness having an experience called Catherine. I'm having an experience. So I'm having this experience with this body, doing this thing. And so I think that if I could, culminate my life, because I'm 60 and I want to have a couple more years, I would like those years to be helping other people understand that they are a consciousness having an experience. And, how do we create a richer, more involved, more meaningful experience in this time, in this moment, in this body, as a consciousness, growing and learning.
That's awesome. Yeah. So this is the part where we kind of shout out how to get in touch with you. So if someone's interested in having a conversation with you, kind of seeing, how they can kind of get introduced and kind of help themselves, kind of figure some things out, how would they do that, if you're open to that? If not,
I'm totally open. And I'm such a bad marketer. But Because I have a website, but I don't have the website developed. So, but my business name is Velvet Black Dog, named after my dog Roxette. And I can be emailed at velvetblackdog.com. And I think you can find me on Instagram under Velvet Black Dog also. And my handle is Quaalude because I have a flock of quail. So it's Quaalude. I think it's with 2 A's.
I'll include the link. I'll include
if you
all
could,
this
I think you have my Instagram link actually.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I do. So I'll include
and
it.
I do often do postings of like cards that I've read that I think are interesting. I did a card reading at the inauguration for fun. And I thought that was interesting. Yeah.
So you read it on behalf of the state of the world, like this is what's coming ahead of us, and
yeah. And if it, if it resonates with you, then let it resonate with you. But I have done card readings for other people, and and it can be really interesting and insightful. Because it, when you read someone's cards, it's like nothing is like in stone. You actually have the ability to change your path. You actually get to decide. So that's why I think tarot is so useful, is that they say, hey, look at this. This is kind of interesting. If you continue along this pathway, you might fall into a little bit of trouble. But guess what? You can actually turn that in a different direction. It's yours. You own it. It's your story. And you're creating it as you go along, actually. You're creating your own story. And so I'm not really fatalistic in that way, where I think that fate is fate and you're stuck and it's going to happen, So I think that tarot is very cool because it kind of gives you like a point in time snapshot of where you are, what your challenges are, what could possibly happen if you go in the same direction,
Yeah. And that's probably like what most of us need is sort of like, here's your wake up call. This is your snapshot.
Yeah.
Start doing some things, but I just went to the doctor, so that's the trip I'm on right now.
Oh,
I gotta start.
Are you doing good, or are you?
Cholesterol, drinking too many beers. I think pandemic just spoiled me as well, eating out and all that. So I got to kind of get that part of my life better. So.
Well, I have a question for you. I'm just very curious. What is the meaning of the drink token title?
Oh, the title. So I think it kind of goes back. So my partner and I were in college together in a fraternity. And so back then, the promotion, the bars would come out and give you drink tokens. And they were like, one drink free. So we'd stockpile them up and then go out and just, instead of paying money for drinks, we'd have all these tokens. So it's a drink tokens podcast. And then he was a bouncer for a number of years. And I was just in hospitality for years. So it's kind of brings back the bar world with podcasts. But now as I'm like, getting these doctor's orders, I'm going to have to change it to like, green smoothies podcast or something, I don't know.
Podcast.
Yeah. You take these pills podcast, like these vitamins.
Well, thank you so much for, first of all, your curiosity about these things that, you don't really know about, and your amazing acceptance and openness towards hearing and listening. And I think that that's why I wanted Carol and I to do this together, because I'm kind of coming out now, where I want this to be a normal part of my world. And I'm really, really grateful for this opportunity. Thank you so much. And also, Carol and I have never done anything this fun like this. Carol, we should do this again sometime.
We should do this again.
This was really fun. Thank you so much for doing this with me.
You're welcome, and thank you both very much. I didn't know what to expect either, but I mean, it's super cool that you guys are cool. And so you could take this subject and just not, turn it into like a horror movie that I'm crying right now. But yes, thank you very much for sharing. And so let me do the closeout. So thanks all. Drink tokens number 28. Thank you, Catherine and Carol, very much.